Thank you very much for joining us today.
Under Kelly Williamson, and I'm your MC. Joining us today, we have the Honorable Anita Anand, Minister of National Defence, General Wayne Eyre, Chief of the Defence Staff, and Jody Thomas, Deputy Minister of National Defence. We are here today to apologize to all members of the defence team, past and present, who have experienced or been affected by sexual assault or sexual misconduct, including sexual harassment or discrimination based on sex, gender, gender identity, or sexual orientation in the workplace. Par les présentes excuses, nous...
This apology is to recognize the importance of acknowledging these harms, your lived experiences, and our responsibilities. The Honorable Anita Anand, Minister of National Defence, will provide an apology on behalf of the Government of Canada.
And offer an apology on behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces to all those affected, including current and former members and veterans, and all current and former staff of the non-public funds Canadian Forces. Par la suite, la sous-ministre Thomas présente.
Following that, Deputy Minister Thomas will apologize to the entire defence team, and in particular, to current and former civilian employees on behalf of the Department of National Defence. Their apologies will last about 40 minutes.
Those affected, including their loved ones and families, there will not be a formal Q&A following official remarks. And we also understand that the content of today's apology may be difficult for many, so we remind all current and former defence team members that they can access a variety of resources from our website 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and links to support services are readily available in the online description. Nous comprenons qu'il pourrait être difficile pour...
We understand that the content of today's event will be difficult for some viewers. This is why we remind you that current and former members of the defence team can take advantage of a range of services through our website, which is accessible 24/7. We remind you that support services are also readily available online.
Anita Anand. Madame, à vous la parole.
Good afternoon. I am speaking to you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I recognize that this land has long been a place of meeting and gathering for Indigenous people, and we join you in a spirit of respect and reconciliation. The members of our Canadian Armed Forces have always put service before self by stepping up to serve Canada. You come from all backgrounds, faiths, and ethnicities, and you have a diversity of gender identities and sexual orientations. Que ce soit pour protéger.
Whether it is to protect Canadians here in Canada or abroad, you have always done everything your country asked of you.
Years, all Canadians have been reminded of how crucial your work is here at home. You have saved lives in long-term care homes. You have delivered vaccines across, always had Canadians' backs, and we should always have yours. Vous avez toujours veillé.
You have always had Canadians' backs, and we should always have yours.
Many members of the Canadian Armed Forces, veterans, current and former employees of the Department of National Defence, and staff of the non-public funds have suffered sexual harassment, sexual assault, or discrimination based on sex, gender, gender identity, and sexual orientation. This misconduct and abuse of power led to a crisis of broken trust in the defense team. Beaucoup trop d'actuels et
Far too many members of the Canadian Armed Forces, veterans, current and former employees of the Department of National Defense, and staff of the non-public funds have suffered sexual harassment, sexual assault, or discrimination based on sex, gender, gender identity, and sexual orientation. This misconduct and abuse of power has led to a crisis of broken trust in the defense team here in the department.
As Minister of National Defense, I am apologizing to you on behalf of the Government of Canada. Aujourd'hui,
Today, as Minister of National Defense, I am apologizing to you on behalf of the Government of Canada.
acknowledge the pain and trauma that so many have endured because the very institution charged with protecting and defending our country has not always protected and defended its own members. I apologize on behalf of the Government of Canada and on behalf of those elected officials who, throughout the history of the Canadian Armed Forces, had the responsibility to protect you and who failed to do so. I apologize to the thousands of Canadians who were harmed because your government did not protect you, nor did we ensure that the right systems were in place to ensure justice and accountability. For far too long, your government failed to dedicate enough time, money, personnel, and effort to deal with sexual harassment, sexual assault, and discrimination based on sex, gender, gender identity, and sexual orientation in the military and the department. Countless lives have been harmed because of inaction and systemic failure. This is a failure that our Canadian Armed Forces, our department, and the Government of Canada will always carry with us. These institutions failed you, and for that, we are sorry. I am sorry. Il s'agit d'un...
This is a failure that our Canadian Armed Forces, our department, and the Government of Canada will always carry with us. These institutions failed you, and for that, we are sorry. I am sorry.
I apologize to everyone affected, current and former National Defense employees and Canadian Armed Forces members, including veterans who suffered during and after their service, staff of the non-public funds, and members of the class action settlements, and your families. Pendant des décennies,
over many decades, the Government of Canada did not keep its most basic promise to you who do the utmost to serve our country. I acknowledge that successive governments have not done nearly enough to stamp out this scourge.
Decades. The Government of Canada did not keep its most basic promise to you who do the utmost to serve our country. I acknowledge that successive governments have not done nearly enough to stamp out this scourge. To all Canadians who signed up to serve our country, full of hope, zeal, and spirit. To those who always dreamed of putting on a uniform and who answered the call of service only to find your own calls for help ignored, your calls for justice and dignity disregarded, and your faith in our institution betrayed. We are sorry. I am sorry. Nous sommes des...
We are sorry. I am sorry.
We pledge this. Things can change. They must change. And I say it to you, they will change. This is our most basic responsibility, our most important task, and my top and absolute priority. Ce changement est en...
This change is already underway. At all levels, people are working very hard to create a more positive work environment that will allow us to remove all the negative and regressive aspects of our institutional culture.
I have seen the dedication of incredible leaders on our team working to build trust, credibility, and moral authority. As minister, I am deeply committed to leading meaningful progress, and I know that up and down the ranks of our institution, there are people stepping up to lead deep and transformational culture change. Together, we are working to create an institutional culture that enables every member of our team to reach their full potential in an environment where they feel safe, protected, and respected. En tant que ministre, je suis pleinement
As minister, I am deeply committed to leading meaningful progress. And I know that up and down the ranks of our institution, there are people stepping up to lead deep and transformational culture change. Together, we are working to create an institutional culture that enables every member of our team to reach their full potential in an environment where they feel safe, protected, and respected.
I want to make this very clear. The Canadian Armed Forces and Department of National Defence form a crucial part of our nation's fabric. And it is a great honor for me to serve you as Minister of National Defence. To the people who make up our Canadian Forces and our department, we need you. Canada needs you. And I promise I will work hard every single day to earn your trust. Les Forces armées canadiennes.
The Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defence form a crucial part of our nation's fabric. And it is a great honor to serve you as Minister of National Defence. To the people who make up our Canadian Armed Forces and our department, we need you. Canada needs you. And I will work hard every single day to earn your trust.
Merci. I now invite Chief of the Defence Staff, General Wayne Eyre, to offer his remarks.
This is an important day that will be difficult for many. We are confronting and acknowledging a number of difficult truths. For far too long, too many members of the Canadian Armed Forces and Defence Team family have suffered harm and lived in fear of reprisal or reporting that harm. Far too many of you carry the burden of and have lived with experiences, some for decades now, of sexual assault, sexual harassment, discrimination, and exclusion based on your sex, your gender identity, or your sexual orientation. Ces comportements, non.
There is absolutely no place for this in our institution, and we acknowledge and recognize that there are exclusionary aspects of our institutional culture that are not aligned with the core values we aspire to uphold or the expectations of those we serve and protect. This must change.
Up to serve your country in the armed forces, to be willing to put service before self, to sacrifice much, perhaps all, for your fellow Canadians, to know the risks and still put your life in danger to protect the people and the country you love. You should expect to be safe from harm on your own base, wing, or ship, among others who wear the same uniform. But many of you suffered harm at the hands of your comrades in arms, people you should have been able to trust. Des gens en qui vous deviez pouvoir avoir.
People that you should be able to trust. People who were supposed to be as members of your family.
Trust can mean the difference between life and death. And we have betrayed that trust. Cette confiance a été trahie par des collègues.
This was not because an insufficient number of measures were taken to end this situation.
Of the CAF and our veterans, but also to public service employees and to staff of the non-public funds, Canadian Forces, who serve alongside us. As someone who has given my entire life to this institution and who loves it so deeply, it breaks my heart. And today I offer my most profound apologies. On behalf of an institution that has failed you, on behalf of those who didn't listen, on behalf of every person who took no action, we profoundly and sincerely apologize. Mes excuses s'adressent à tous les membres de l'équipe de la défense, anciens et actuels.
My apologies extend to every member of the defense team, past and present, who has been harmed or affected by sexual misconduct. Those who are claimants of the Canadian Armed Forces and Department of National Defense sexual misconduct class action, and those who are not. We acknowledge that we did not do what was necessary to keep you safe.
Moral authority to deliver this apology. And I've asked those questions too, particularly because your leaders and those who preceded us did not make sufficient change. The harm you suffered happened on our collective watch, on my watch, whether through naivety or ignorance, both inexcusable, the problem persisted. The harm continued, and it has yet to be successfully or sufficiently acknowledged or addressed. Nous avons, beaucoup trop lentement,
We have far too slowly come to realize the terrible toll this has taken on our people. We have not done the deep transformational work needed to address the underlying cultural issues that contribute to sexual misconduct and other forms of harm. We unfairly place the onus on those who were harmed to come forward to effect change. This should not have been your burden to carry. C'est avec
to share their experiences in hopes of making positive change to our institution. And all those who supported others and those who have taken action to demand change within the CAF. Vous avez servi honorablement.
You have served honorably, trying to change the culture and create a better future. We let down your many colleagues who served and continue to serve with honor. We let down Canadians who want to be proud of their armed forces, but find that increasingly difficult with each new revelation of harm.
Arms has not only robbed many CAF members of their careers, but it has also robbed the CAF and the country we serve of so much potential. Des personnes exceptionnelles qui ont
great people who could have been the next generation of leaders, of potentially talented sailors, soldiers, aviators, and operators who will never sign up and discover their potential.
in our military, we must change our culture. We must build trust. There's no currency as difficult to earn or as easy to squander. It will take tangible actions to make real and lasting change. This time, we will not fail. This is my commitment to you. Mon engagement à vos familles.
My commitment to your families and to those beside you. To the memory of our colleagues who suffered and who are not there to hear these words. To our communities and our country.
And it demands a complete unity of purpose. It is work that we have already begun. Much of this work is the result of sustained efforts by survivors, representative plaintiffs in the class actions, and those who supported them, advocacy groups and others, including a number of our own colleagues within the defense team who have devoted themselves to culture change. Because it's at the grassroots level where true and lasting change will take hold. As one survivor recently shared, change turns us inward. It causes us to look at ourselves, our beliefs, our moral compass, how we hear and interpret others. It teaches us to recognize our biases and challenge our cultural and societal views. I have spent a great deal of time reflecting on this institution, the cultural change we face, why our past efforts have failed to deliver the necessary results, and what we must do to break this cycle and forge a new path. J'ai eu du mal à concilier mes...
I had difficulty in reconciling these efforts and to help people who were affected. I know that the survivors need this help. We must work so that the people who have been accused or found responsible of causing harm will be treated proportionately based on the procedures of the law. We must support survivors and act with empathy. We must listen to them and react in the appropriate way.
Institution's failure to adequately deal with cases often creates a sense of betrayal that is more devastating than the incident itself. You told us that you suffered alone, that you felt isolated and silenced, as though you had no one in your corner. I've read survivor testimony. I've heard of some of your experiences of being targeted for harassment, violence, and abuse, suffering incidents of hazing that were, in reality, sexual assault. Le fait d'avoir eu à prendre des mesures.
The fact of having taken extraordinary measures to protect yourselves because nobody else was taking care of you. Some of you told us that you're exhausted by the dehumanizing efforts coming from microaggressions that you suffer daily. And that this made you believe that you don't have a place in the armed forces besides your colleagues and leaders.
Has gone unfilled, whose sense of purpose has been diminished, whose dreams of a rewarding career of service to their country have been crushed, of members seeking the camaraderie of service who found instead hostility, betrayal, or worse, physical assaults. Des voies de fait, pourtant atteint votre.
This has attacked your dignity and your humanity.
Trauma was inflicted by someone in a position to make or break your career. Clear abuses of power. In a hierarchical institution where we profess to put our people first, this is beyond intolerable. I've heard of the policies, processes, and programs we have in place to serve you have, in many cases, amplified your trauma. Nous ne pouvons et ne devons pas.
We cannot hide these truths. You were let down. You were hurt. And when you tried to get help, we did not react.
Of the Canadian Armed Forces, I am sorry. We sincerely apologize for the trauma that you have experienced. To those who suffered in silence, we are sorry. To those who shouted until you could shout no more, at great personal risk, only to have no one listen to you, we are sorry. To those who came forward and were told to be quiet, to not rock the boat, to think of your career, or to prioritize the career of the person who harmed you, we are sorry. À toutes les personnes
to all those people who have manifested themselves and did not receive support but suffered reprisals, we are sorry. To all those who militated for change and who were let down, we are sorry.
done to you, to your careers, and to your dreams. And we acknowledge that as you have suffered, so have those around you, your families, friends, and all those who love and support you. For this too, we sincerely apologize. We are sorry. Every day, people wearing the uniform of the Canadian Armed Forces serve proudly all over the world. They're defending Canada and its interests and the values and principles we as Canadians cherish, including, fundamentally, the right of every person to be treated with respect and dignity. Lorsque des membres de l'équipe de la défense.
When members of the team are not treated with respect and dignity in their base, on their wing, on their ship, and during deployments, this institutional hypocrisy is evident. I want to see to it that this government will see a change.
And instead, we hope it is an important step forward. We are committed to listening and to learning from those who can teach us, and to doing so with humility, respect, and compassion. We will make mistakes. There will be setbacks, and there may be more difficult truths that we need to confront. Some of our new initiatives will miss the mark. These are issues that invariably come with change. But we will be honest and transparent about mistakes in order to learn quickly and continue to move forward together towards our goal of a defense team where everyone feels welcomed, supported, empowered, and inspired each and every day. Nous avons tous un rôle à jouer.
We all have a role to play. We know the real work is realizing transformative change that runs deep to our very foundations and permeates our entire culture, our behaviors, our attitudes, and our beliefs.
A daunting task, the greatest challenge of our times, because it is existential. Our relevance, our effectiveness as a military force, our continued value to Canada and Canadians depends on our success in acknowledging and ending harm. I am convinced that we can succeed. The day I stop believing this is the day I can no longer serve. We can make the Canadian Armed Forces an example for the 21st century. Nous devons nous fonder sur les...
Taking the elements of our culture that are worth celebrating, traditions of idealism, of courage, of being part of something bigger, and changing the exclusionary aspects to become even better. A strong, resilient, and adaptable military, ready to confront an increasingly dangerous and unpredictable future.
Any challenge, anywhere in the world, ready to defend Canada and Canadians as the threats to our security multiply. Because at the heart of that strength, resilience and adaptability is the very best talent and energy this vast, diverse country can offer. Certes, nous ne pouvons pas changer.
We cannot change the past, but we will change the present and the future for the Canadian Armed Forces.
It's real. We will harness this energy and turn it into tangible, human-centric, trauma and survivor-informed action. Voilà le parcours qui nous attend.
This is the journey ahead of us.
Nothing less than this to you, to all members of the defense team, to Canadians, and to the future of this force and this country. Thank you. Merci. Megwich.
Thank you.
Deputy Minister Thomas to deliver her portion of today's apology.
Thank you, Minister Anand. General Eyre. Good afternoon. Today, I would like to directly address all persons who have been harmed by sexual harassment, sexual assault, and discrimination based on sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation while working in the past or present at the Department of National Defence, in the Canadian Armed Forces, or as part of the staff of the non-public funds Canadian Forces. This includes friends, families, and colleagues. I especially want to recognize the class members of the Canadian Armed Forces and Department of National Defence Sexual Misconduct Class Action, whether you've submitted a claim or have chosen not to. This apology is to all of you. En ma qualité de sous-ministre de la Défense nationale, je souhaite présenter des excuses officielles pour les préjudices causés par...
As Deputy Minister of National Defence, I am here to formally apologize for the harm caused by sexual misconduct within Canada's Department of National Defence. My organization and its leadership, together with the leadership of the Canadian Armed Forces, have failed to do their utmost to protect our employees, CAF members, and staff of non-public funds from a wide range of harmful behavior.
excluded, harassed, humiliated, demeaned, or assaulted while working in the Department of National Defence or harmed by persons who work within the Department of National Defence, I sincerely apologize. To all who faced reprisals or retaliation when you tried to report your experience or seek assistance, I sincerely apologize. To those who have been told explicitly or implicitly that your safety did not or does not matter, that you were not an equal part of this defense team, that you had done something to deserve what you had experienced, or that you are not important enough for your experience to be seriously credited, examined, or addressed, I sincerely apologize. If you as a parent, spouse, partner, or child, or other family member have witnessed and absorbed the enduring pain of watching a loved one or friend carry the burden of their lived experience for days, months, years, or decades, I sincerely apologize. Si en tant que témoin d'une conduite sexuelle,
If you, as a parent, spouse, partner, child, or other family member, have witnessed and absorbed the enduring pain of watching a loved one or friend carry the burden of their lived experience, I sincerely apologize. If you as a bystander felt powerless, I sincerely apologize. I sincerely apologize for the actions of these two institutions and the failures of those institutions. A misapplied sense of authority and unhealthy power dynamics persisted for too long in the Department of National Defence and the Canadian Armed Forces.
has resulted in a workplace that was not safe, supportive, and respecting of all persons. Today, I also apologize for my institution's role in exacerbating harm to our employees, members, and staff, including systems that were designed with the intention to help, but instead created barriers to affected persons. In too many cases, willful disregard or entitled obliviousness have worsened the impacts of harm. In this defense team, people, emboldened by a misguided sense of authority, power, or privilege, have caused great harm to those within their authority or their immediate team. There is no possible justification for such a betrayal of trust and responsibility. This betrayal is all the more distressing in an organization such as ours, where trust, honor, and teamwork are fundamental to why and how we serve Canadians. As leaders collectively, we did not consistently and adequately hold such persons to account. In some cases, we permitted them to move to a different job, to do different damage, to perpetuate the cycle of toxicity and harm elsewhere. For this failure, I truly apologize. J'offre mes excuses avec humilité et j'approuve une tristesse profonde.
I offer this apology with humility, with remorse for the enormity of the distress caused, and without any expectation that my words alone will be sufficient to atone for harm done. I offer it as just one action of many now underway and soon to come to address past and current wrongs and to support as much as possible every person's path to healing.
Anita and I won't speak for anyone else, nor pass judgment on anyone's decision to speak or not speak about their own truth. We must all process our own experiences and act upon them according to what is right for us. Speaking personally, during my career, I've witnessed misogyny, homophobia, hazing, exclusion, open contempt, and abuse of authority of varying degrees that was typically justified under the guise of feeding a esprit de corps. When I reflect upon my own service in the Navy, I struggle with my own decisions decades ago to simply ignore behavior directed at me, and that was rooted in misapplied sense of power. I knew that if I had complained, if I had made a fuss, then I would not have been allowed to participate, that women would have been considered weak, and that we couldn't take it. And so I endured what was happening to me and around me, hoping to prove that I was tough enough and deserved to be there, like so many of my colleagues. I didn't understand at the time that such behavior was not about me, but rather about power and the abuse of it. No person who has experienced harassment or abuse of any kind in this defense team should believe themselves at fault or be made to feel at fault by any member or part of either institution. We will do what is right for those harmed and for the future of national defense. The defense team already has work underway to propose fundamental changes to key elements of Canadian Armed Forces systems, processes, and governance. This includes the way we prevent and address sexual misconduct, provide support for those who've been subjected to it, strengthen military justice, and better ensure military and civilian institutional alignment to protect those who work within this organization. As we move ahead, we commit that we will be more consultative, collaborative, and transparent in terms of our approach, more conscious of our actions and the outcomes we are seeking. At our collective core, we all want a strong, safe, and united team that stands up for what is right and good and takes to heart our duty to care for one another, not just through our words or aspirational statements, but in our actions. Such a culture of inclusion, of true team spirit, will flourish when we, as individuals and as a collective, choose to put aside behaviors that are not in our team's or our country's best interests. When we accept that this change is not a nice to have, but an imperative to achieve. Through each of us committing to do what is right as individuals, by holding one another accountable, the people behind the department and the Canadian Armed Forces will ensure that we have the institutional willpower to implement and follow through on what needs to change. We can do this. I know we can. And together, we can create a respectful, safe, and enduring defense team culture, which all of us and all Canadians can be proud. Megwich, merci. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Thomas. This concludes today's event. Merci à toutes les personnes qui se sont joints à nous.
Thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Members of the defense team, past and present, who have been harmed by sexual misconduct while serving our country. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you.